We're going to start unpacking Kapahaka. Kapahaka is a very, very important portal for Māori. So it's not only the spoken word for us, but it's also the chanted word, the haka, the poi, all the different disciplines that we use in Kapahaka. It's not a form of entertainment. People actually see it as a form of entertainment, and I suppose in many ways it is, but actually it tells a story. Each song, each action, and everything tells a story. So we'll be unpacking Kapahaka. We'll have more reo and kupu. The reo and kupu that I'll be concentrating on today, or certainly in this series, will be the reo that's being used by the presenters, the reo that we use in Kapahaka. So they're words that we don't use in liturgy. Very few of them, many of them are not used in liturgy because it's not liturgical. It's actually part of poetry and storytelling. So any of those Māori words that are being used, we will pick them up and learn them here in this series. More waiata and more himene, of course. And in the next, this series, of course, we've got presenters who are master Kapahaka people who I have interviewed, recorded, and they take great pleasure in sharing some of their story with you in the unpacking of Kapahaka. There are several disciplines in Kapahaka, and each has a specific message, as I said, to tell us. We have whakaeke, which is the entrance when they come onto the stage or come onto. Mō teatea. Mō teatea is a lament or chant. It's usually one that really pulls at your heartstrings. Waiata tira is a choral. And Waiata Āringa is an action song done with hands. So you saw that in that Waiata Waitangi. Poi, of course, was actually done by men to begin with, to improve their dexterity in their hands. So, but it's become now a visual masterpiece, really, done so by women, of course. Oh, sorry, gentlemen. But poi was initially a war training for war, for dexterity, for the use of the taiaha and the mere, which you see in the background image there on the left-hand side. Haka, of course, and that's got a bit of a story, but I'll let the presenter tell you about that story of where it derived from. What was it about? I can tell you this much: it was really heightened during the Māori Wars, during the New Zealand Wars. Whakawātea is to clear or to exit. Whakawātea. So they're sort of the disciplines in Kapahaka. Mō teatea, which we'll touch a little bit on today, is a centuries-old tradition of chanted song or poetry. Mō teatea were composed for many purposes and reasons, and their composers were great poets. Chiefs and leaders were often composers who used music as an important way to communicate ideas. A mihinare, or Anglican mō teatea, that we use would be in the prayer book, he tikanga whakapono, on page 481, and te whakapono a ngā āpatoro on page 496. And so Taha Māori 2021 has already learnt these chants. We've already done them. But they would be two examples in the prayer book where we use the mō teatea style applied to our affirmation of faith. Te whakawātea on page 500, we haven't covered that, but I'm pointing this out to you because I've explained that in the 499 Eucharistic liturgy, it's based on te kawa o te marae. We've talked about that in the past. This was a liturgy put together specifically using the kawa o te marae. Te whakawātea on page 500 in the prayer book is our liturgical, theological clearing the way of ourselves in preparation for making right any wrongs from within and making new. So we're preparing ourselves for absolution and forgiveness. So we'll unpack more on kapa. I call it kapa. We all call it kapa, rather than the whole word kapahaka. It's just a shortened word. So when you hear me say kapa, you'll know what it means. It's kapahaka. Some of the words you'll be hearing in this series, of course, includes all of these. They are related to kapahaka in one form or another. You'll hear some of those today. So listen out for them. Record them. Take a picture if you like now, or you know, you'll be able to go back over on YouTube for them. But these, when you're listening to the presenters, the people being interviewed, it's not translated for you, so you need to know what they're talking about. Waia te tira, te wero. That te taki te wero was a very interesting kōrero. And it was about how Māori Marsden, Kīngi Īhaka and all of them were trying to blend the church and the marae. So I'll use Holy Sepulchre and Tātai Hono as an example for that kōrero. It was about what is marae and what is church. And some people who go to the marae don't go to church. I think I've said that before in the past. Not everybody on the marae goes to church, but everybody in the church belongs to a marae. So it was about trying to find, you know, some type of acceptable blend, if you like, for everybody, so that they felt that they were a part of, that kapahaka could be a part of both marae and church. So te taki is kapahaka on marae, so that was all done at Tātai Hono. Outside of Holy Sepulchre, and so people were comfortable about that. They felt comfortable about it, including church people. They weren't sure whether or not they should be doing kapahaka in church or not. So it was all about that transitioning. And te wero is kapahaka in the church. And so wero is probably on the next page, but waia te tira choral. Rangi. Rangi is a very important word. It's about the tune or the melody, and a lot of the singing that we do in kapahaka it'll give you goosebumps. It should, just as we do in our choirs. You know, when we listen to a beautiful hymn, we get goosebumps. Peke peke is one used quite a lot, particularly by the men. It's used in haka when they jump around. Rākau is the weaponry, so in the background images, it's the taiaha on the left-hand side. Maurākau is, so rākau is the weapon, but maurākau is the art of weaponry. Rōpū is group, you already know that. Wero, challenge. Ngāwari is a lovely word, beautiful word. We use it a lot. We use it to describe somebody who's very gentle, someone who's not aggressive, someone whose heart is in a very gentle place. Iara is daily. We say iara, iara. Ia tau is yearly, every year, annual. Hakama. So up in the north, we don't use the W normally. The W is dropped. And so you hear the word hakama with older speakers. But we say it as whakama, which is shy. Oranga, spelt wrong in English, wellness. Tinana is your body. Whakawhanaunga, you already know that. And whānau kotahi, being one. Taha, well, here we are, taha Māori, you already know that as well, to be alongside. There was the whole thinking of taha Māori, to be alongside. Matua, fire, father, mother. Haukainga, you've heard that too, in people. Tanga whenua, if you like, but haukainga is more appropriate for marae use. Hōrangatira, that's your partner or spouse, someone you're married to, someone you've devoted your heart to. Tamariki, you would know. Pukana. Pukana is, you know, when the eyes widen. And you see it a lot in Kapahaka. And that's to stare wildly. And it's used as part of that scare tactic, you know, to scare people off. They use it in, the All Blacks use it in Kapahaka. When they do the haka before a game, they pukana. Tutu ngārahu, the war dance. So it's easy to think about it as haka, but actually it's got a proper word. It's tutu ngārahu. Taiaha, the long wooden weapon, as I said in the image at the back. Tūtawa, levels of weaponry skill. So there is now a discipline that takes us very much like karate, judo, you know, all those sort of disciplines. There's also discipline in weaponry for men and women. Kaiwero, that's usually the you know, at a big porphyry, at one of those big, huge formal porphyries when the Prime Minister's coming on, or the Queen, or whoever of importance is coming on, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Māori there, and then there's generally a war party that comes out, and it is a war party, and it is a wero. It's a challenge to the manuhiri. Do you come as a friend or foe? So the kaiwero is the usually one single guy, man, usually, who comes out ahead of the other men. There might be 4 or 5 of them that have advanced ahead of everybody, and he is the one that lays down something on the ground for the manuhiri to pick up and accept, to say, we come in peace. If they didn't pick it up, well, I haven't seen that happen, but I imagine that that would be a little uncomfortable. I'm sure others have seen it happen, but I personally haven't experienced it. You already know kōrero, tāngata. If it didn't have a macron on the A, it'd be one person, but because it's got a macron there, it's plural, so it's people. Hare mai and kete. And so there's some of the kupu that you will hear being used today. So unpacking Kapahaka with John Tapene. Matua John Tapene has a lifetime of service to his Māori communities, both young and old. He was principal at Northland College in Kaikohe. I think, Chris, you know where Kaikohe is? A town in the lower socio-economic region of Northland, with a high crime rate amongst its rangatahi, young people. Kaikohe struggles to provide for all that its young people need in areas of health, wealth, and well-being. A town I grew up with until I left to go to college at the age of 13. John has been grounded in education and has followed that calling for his entire adult life in one form or another. Following a health scare in 2009, John has been a strong advocate for people to look after themselves better. Years of boil-ups and unhealthy eating and drinking had taken its toll on John's health. He knew something had changed. And in this exclusive interview, you will hear John talk about the importance of an all-round healthy lifestyle of whānau, waiata, attitude, tinana, body, hinengaro, mind, and wairua, spirit, and finding inspiration in and with others. So let's hear John unpacking Kapahaka for us today.
Ai tēnā no tātou katoa, ko John Tapene tōku ingoa, ko tōku matua no mane poto tūwhare toa. I tipua ke ai tōku matua kei i whānau mai ia kei Waimiha, heoi ana e tipua ke ai ia kei te taha o te moana o Tauponui Atia. O rere ki tōna taha, ko tō ngariro te maunga, ko Tauponui Atia te moana, ko te heo te tangata, ko tūwhare tō te iwi. Nā ko te hapu, ko ngā tihine mihi, i reira rā tō mātou marae, a ko Petania, ko te whare i reira rā, ko hine mihi. Te taha o tōku whaia, ko rangi haukaha te puke e tūmai nā, kei raro rā e rua o ngā whare, ko te rarawa, ko te uri o hina. Kei reira rā hoki te puna e rere ana, nā ko tangonge, e reira rā te haukainga o tōku whaia, nā ko puke poto. I tipua, ai whānau mai a hau kei one hunga, i tipua ke ai a hau i konei nā, ai nei, ka whakahokia māua ko taku hoaranga tira, me o māua tamariki ki konei, ki te noho ana i one hunga. Rere tēnā no tātou kato. Kia ora mai. I used to go with Mum and watch Peter tutoring. We weren't brought up in Te Reo. We were not. Dad had always said for us to get educated, go through your school, you get all your learning done in Kapahaka. When it's time, I will give over to you your tikanga, your reo and your tikanga. And so we used to have readings 2 or 3 times a week. Dad's favourite reading was Psalm 67. We would have prayers regularly. We always had karakia. And I used to go and I used to watch the likes of Kepa Sterling, Tawe Walters, Albie Pirini, Ross Gregory. I would see these fellas with Beta doing maurako. And I went home. And I've got photos of me as a little kid with my rako, pukana, going to town. I wasn't taught maurako, but I was watching. I would see Peter, when these fellas were jumping doing the tutungaru, I would see him sweeping underneath. And then when I see them out doing the performance, and I would see him going out to do the wiro, I would see those similar actions as he's coming out. The actions that they were doing during the haka, during the tutungaru, I would see him using them as he went up to do it. And I would copy those. So later on in life, I would talk to him about maurako, talk to him in taru. And I realised after a couple of months that there was only myself and this fellow, Mahuta Tuhura. We were the only 2 Māori in this group of about 25. And so I wasn't being taught maurako, but I was given the opportunities. So, you know, when I was at training college, I did probably half a dozen wiro to different people who come through. And so, you know, because my kids asked me, you know, where did you get your taiha work from? Because I've taught them aspects of taiha, my girls and my boy. I stopped doing the wiro when I was about 25, about 30. That was my last time I went out. That was with the club. I used to go out for the club and do wiro. Bangy was the first one who used to go out. And then I took over from him. So whenever we had wiro at Tātaihon, I would be the one going out. And I wasn't taught it. I observed and I spoke, and so I wasn't taught one mode of rako. So you know how Pete Sharples has set up that tūtaua, and he's got those eight po. I didn't go through that sort of learning. I went through the learning of what is the role of the kaiwiro when you go out on the different phases as you go across that ground. And there were the 5 phases that that people would talk to me about. Ross would talk about 3. Peter would talk about the 3, but his 3 were different to Ross's. Abe Karoti, who learned from Petawatere, he talked about 7. So different people had, but you take all that and then you look at who's coming in. What do you need to do in order to keep yourself in your opu? I didn't start any reo until Kīngi arrived. When he arrived and formed the Auckland Anglican Māori Club, and it was the first time I'd had an opportunity to learn a song from start to end. So all other Māori songs that I'd learned from sitting around home when Mum and her mates used to party, and they start songs. But you know, when you're in a party mood, people know the first verse and that's it. They don't know the rest of it, and so you don't get to hear the whole waiata. And so when Kīngi came was the first chance I had to learn songs from beginning to end. And because I didn't understand te reo, I was young and cheeky enough to go up and ask him at the breaks, what does the song mean? And I just sat and listened. I'd go home and then write up his kōrero. And I've still got that kōrero.
Oh, wow.
I would go back. I'd go back the following week and I would say to him, I didn't quite understand when you were talking about, what does that mean? Because a lot of his songs were written around pepeha, whakatauki, whakatauaki. I didn't know those pepeha, those whakatauki and whakatauaki. Other times when he was talking with Toro and Tawe, because they used to often talk and just sit down. Henare Graham, they would sit down and have these deep kōrero, and I'm standing on the side, and then Toro or Henare or Tawe would say, how to kōrero, John? And so I would ask them, because Kīngi was involved in this, and so they would give me the kōrero about those pepeha, whakatauki, whakatauaki. And so I would get those, and that allowed me to get into the thinking, Kīngi's thinking about where his mind was at particular times. So, you know, if we take the first song that he actually wrote for the club, Te Whakapono, that became the origins of Te Taki o Te Whakapono, Te Wiro o Te Whakapono. Being able to get that time to sit with Matu and talk to him about his compositions. I've got a lot of his writings here, and you know, he's actually dated some of his songs. So it wasn't just the kupu, but he was writing about the people who were around him and how I think we were influencing him and he was influencing us. And so for me, when I'm teaching his songs, I want to try and get people to understand the thinking of Matu at that time and the timbre that was coming through in his compositions, the tenor that was coming through, and the emotions that he was feeling from both sides. And that's why it's so important to me for the people not to just know the words, but also the rangi, because the rangi is indicative of the feeling, of the moods, you know, and some of the changes in his compositions as time went on. He got influenced by us, you know, by us in our parties, and that's what I'm so driven with his kupu, for people to understand not just the literal translation, but the deeper meanings about what he was writing, the time when it was being written, what was happening at that time, what was happening in Auckland, in Aotearoa, in the world. That's why it's so important to me. Don't just sing the song, understand right inside, understand the tikanga, understand the whakapapa of the waiata, then it allows you to bring it out. The Anglican clubs the Anglican club actions are very staid. There's no, you know, they're very staid action songs. You know, aroha is always going to be here, whakapono is always going to be, haere mai. So they're very staid actions, but they are suitable for the words. But if someone says haere mai, another one says haere mai, another one says haere mai, I'm okay with that. That's why it's so important for me that the person knows the words, because it allows them then to, because remember, it's waiata ringa. That's what that, and that's what it is to me, that our waiata ringa are actually waiata tira, and that you should be able to express yourselves. But I think what is important is that as a kapahaka, there are moments in your performance where you want everybody to make a statement, because that statement is saying, now listen to us all. So when we all start with one action, and people are, oh, here's a message coming. And then you get all these different messages, and then suddenly they all come back together, and here's a common message. And so we all have those common actions, and we're all in uniform, and then we go away, and the message has different meanings, and then you come back again. And that's what I think is important in Kapahaka, is that where you need a common message to come through, everybody comes together in uniformity with the actions, or with, you know, one or two actions, one hit and a clap and beat, because it says to people, hey, listen here. You know, you have those big statements. So that's why, for me, knowing your kupu and knowing when we want to be together to give a real solid messages, that's what I look for in our performances. I have a few other groups that I work with, and I take no payment from them. I think what I've been given, what my brothers and I have been given, are gifts. We've been fortunate enough to be gifted with the opportunity to we've got musical backgrounds. Now we're musically inclined. You know, as a family, we can sing together. We can hold our own notes. We can influence others in our singing, and I think we're very fortunate. It was Taru Rankin who gave me a different thinking about ka puteruha ka hao te rangatahi. It's not about the old net is cast aside and the new net goes fishing. It's more about if your kete is full of knowledge, then in order to put new knowledge in, you must give out some of the old knowledge. Don't discard it. And so that's what it is for me, is that I'm not allowed to sit still. I've got to record it somewhere. And so that's what I am doing, is I'm recording it in order to make sure that other people can have access who may not always be able to come to club, or people who want to find out a little bit more about the Anglican Club and about where it's come from and about the drive from Matu. For my drivers, and as I started off, when I get there on Thursdays night, on the first night, I can see those people. I can still hear their voices right up through to the end. When we finish that last note after the closing hymn, I can hear the voices. I can hear the richness of the basses coming through there, and then even the karakia, because that's how we finished Gato, and I can still hear those voices. I can hear people's voices coming through. They may not be there, but I hear them. That's my drive. You sing with the club at different places, and you see the absolute delight in faces when they say, there's that Angie sound. There's that Angie sound. I love that feeling. I love that feeling that we're still around and people recognize it. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about taikura.
I remember sitting with Tamahuata, because Tama used to be in the club, and he was chair of Matatini. And I remember talking to him about the Māori Music Awards and wanting to have a section in the Māori Music Awards around Kapahaka. And I suggested to him that Kapahaka has its own realm. And when you cross that realm with waiata like Poie and Moie, when you cross that realm with those, you're crossing it only with the musical backing. In Kapahaka, the performing arts, you're not allowed the electronic support. You have to produce all your sound there on the stage. How can there be equality in terms of looking for which is better than? So my suggestion was to keep it out. But for life after the Performing Arts Festival, for the performers, it's how can we provide them with another avenue? And so that's why when they run the competition down in Palmy, they had a stage for ex-Kapahaka. So you had your matatini, they were now performing matatini, and there was a second stage. It was for the old diehards who didn't want to give up but couldn't get onto the matatini stage. It was also good for the groups, because now they could now say, "Oh, Auntie Joe, we want to bring the young ones through, but they're a bit hakama because they can't get in because the old fellas are still around. But we want these young ones because we want to be able to jump and pick it. But we're going to start up." And so they were able to establish these. And these old groups, they had 80, 90 people in them. And so that's what taikura came out of. It came out of having this opportunity for these Auntie Joes and Uncle Johns and Uncle Tom and Auntie Ngarangi and Auntie Coes and so on. It was an opportunity for us to still be involved, but in our own realm. And so it became the driving force for it. It started around composers. So the focus was on composers. And then each year we continued on with that same thing. And the idea was that they had to be pre-1972. Well, see, Matatini didn't start until 72. And a lot of Kīngi's waiata, sure, he had some songs pre 72, but a lot of his real solid works came post 72. So we would go down and we would perform. Half of our program was his old songs, but we'd also throw in some of his new songs. Taikura was about an opportunity for people who had been on those national stages to get back into the Kapahaka, but more so it's now about he oranga, te oranga te tina nei. It's about saying to the old people, you've still got life in you, bring it together. And so that's another aspect. Now, what's the drive for me it is Kapahaka for some of our club members is the only physical movement they have on a weekly basis. It's the only hatinana that they have on a weekly basis. That's why I say to them, look, please go home and do some practice at home. Take your videos and practice at home.
I remember at one time coming to you because I was, life runs away for all of us, particularly those of us who are working full-time, if not 2 jobs. And I remember coming to you saying, oh gosh, I've been meaning to come back. And I remember you saying to me, come back. It's good for you. It's good for your wairua. Come back. You'll see, and I have, and you're right.
I love seeing the rohe. I love seeing the different rohe bringing their waiata, bringing their whakapapa, bringing their hitori to the stage, and some of those old waiata too. Some of those old waiata te puea of the, oh man, and then when you see Pātea come on with some of those tātara kihi waiata, oh, beautiful.
Yes.
So that's taikura for me. It's a resurgence of waiata through the eyes and lives of the older people. What I also enjoy is catching up with some of those, because it was whakawhanaungatanga. You would go off and you would meet people and you'd see them every 2 years and you'd catch up. Those people get together. They get together and catch up on those trips. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. And for some, I really enjoy it when they go into that front row. When people who have never been in the front row in a kapahaka, when they end up in the front row. I love that. You can just see the pride, man. I've seen some of those women get up there. I love it. Never been, and there they are, over 50 and in the front row. I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Koutou e hakarongo mai nā, nei rā te mihi anō, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
And we're very blessed to have someone of your caliber, encouraging us and enabling us and empowering us. Thank you, John.
Why is this rōpū important? Whakawhanaungatanga. Like I've been with this group for, over 20 years, but it's about whānau, eh? We've got some really good whānau here, and that's what keeps me coming back every week. And of course, te reo Māori and waiata and kapahaka and all this kind of thing. But it's not competitive, it's really ngāwari, it's really laid back. You don't have to be the best or anything like this, but you do have to put in the work, so yeah. Not only that, we're keeping Kīngi Īhaka's waiata alive, and that's really important.
So we've got a lot of aroha and a lot of wairua within this church building because we're singing really wonderful songs that have come from someone who wanted to bring tikanga Māori and the Christian word together.
It's important for me to be in amongst our people because of my upbringing in schooling. It was very hard for me to learn English, let alone learn Māori. So when I met this group, I told them all that and they said, you come along because we will help you. that was great for me. The feelings that you get from inside are feelings that I really missed out on when I was younger. So, yeah, it's very great.
Te kapahaka ngā mahi e pai ana tātou te iwi Māori, he whānau kutahi tātou, ia wā, ia tau.
And there we have it, an interview with John Tapene, who is a tutor of Kapahaka, amongst many other things. Education, of course, is at the heart of everything that he does, including today.